Well, Bungie is out there on the promotional trail at the moment for the Witch Queen, and Joe Blackburn and Blake Battle have been chatting about the upcoming raid, the campaign, and also potential new locations. Well, today I'm going to round up all the info as we try to tease out new details from the Bungie team related to the Witch Queen coming on February the 22nd. Well, if you're new around here or find this useful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for all the latest Destiny 2 content and turn on notifications by hitting that bell. Well, Ryan Gilliam from Polygon recently sat down with Joe and Blake from Bungie to try and tease out some new details from them related to the upcoming Witch Queen expansion, and Ryan is a huge Destiny fan and often writes for Polygon about the game. So I definitely recommend heading over to polygon.com and checking out Ryan Gilliam's work. Without further delay, let's head on over to that interview with Joe Blackburn and also Blake Battle. So Ryan says, unlike the past Destiny campaigns, and more like the dedicated first-person shooter campaigns, the Witch Queen promises story-focused missions that features large-scale battles mixed with exploration. So we call this the definitive Destiny campaign, said Joe Blackburn, but we're bringing that one out, to players who might just have picked up Destiny 2 and just finished New Light. We're thinking, how can we bring that experience to them in a way that's not going to totally trounce them and feel like, oh my god, this game is so hard, I'm never going to be able to play it, but it feels like it's cut from the same cloth. And so, as you finish the campaign and you've gone through a bunch of those experiences, you start to get into things like dungeons or raids or offensives or, secret missions. All that stuff that feels more familiar to you, and it feels like the same game. When we compare it to something like Doom or Halo, it's that more epic single-player experience where missions can kind of really, come into their own. Hasn't really been much of a focus in the last 2 years until now, said the project lead, Blake Battle. So as a long-time endgame Destiny player, it's easy to see those touches in small places during the Witch Queen's campaign's second mission, which I watched the entirety of for a recent preview. The game funnels you in certain directions, but Bungie seem okay with players finding their own way or discovering secrets naturally. It's certainly a more of a guided experience than the mystery-heavy raids and the dungeons, but even watching the mission play out in front of me, it felt like Bungie was testing the waters with more complex ideas in what was typically a simple activity. But still, Destiny has a major gap between casual and hardcore players, and getting players into the endgame is a difficult task. However, it's one that potentially benefits all players, as it allows for a stronger narrative connection between the endgame experiences and the campaign. Well, knowing that Blackburn wouldn't spoil the expansion's upcoming raid, I did ask him about the gap between the campaign and the raid bosses. So expansion main villains, like Eramis from Beyond Light, often meet their end in the campaign, so story-only players get a satisfying conclusion. Bungie has departed from this approach in the past, with Oryx serving as the raid boss for both the Kingsfall raid and also the Taken King expansion, or even Riven serving as the Last Wish raid boss after pulling the strings in Forsaken, although even in Forsaken, Aldrin met his end in the campaign after being advertised as the villain. But facing a boss that's never seen in the main campaign story, for example the Sanctified Mind in the Garden of Salvation, can make the raid feel like a side activity rather than the culmination of an expansion. Blackburn told me it's a complex issue and something that Bungie is always trying to solve. So how do you give players who don't take part in raids a satisfying end to an expansion while also tying the narrative into something a large chunk of players will never experience? We have to increase the number of players who engage in those more complex activities, otherwise half of the audience will always feel unsatisfied. Sometimes you feel like you're going on this journey to a rather epic raid that you've talked about, and you're going up in steps, or you're going up steps, and then suddenly there's a big canyon and the rope bridge is out, said Blackburn. And then you're like, well, how do I do this? And everyone's just like, well, you got to jump. And you've probably never been in a looking for group environment before, and you've probably never been in something this hard before, and you've probably never dealt with these kind of mechanics before, and it all feels like you're taking all this stress at once, and a bunch of people just say, are you effing crazy? Like, I'm not going to jump over that canyon. I'd love to get to a point where we didn't feel like we had that canyon, and we still might have to step up some stairs, but in Destiny, we're going to hold your hand all the way. Because I think one of the things that we're also pretty passionate about is keeping those raid experiences pretty special, right? So I'm not super interested in saying, hey, you can just tour a bunch of raid spaces, or, do a really pared down version of the experience. We think a bunch of what makes this special is the reliance on cooperation and taking your friends through it. Well, Blackburn has a good poker face, but as a long-time Destiny player, I suspect we won't face down the Witch Queen herself in the expansion's raid, Instead, players will likely see the conclusion or the turning point of her story during the campaign, where every single Destiny player can see it. Still, the Witch Queen expansion's campaign improvements offer some hope that I could be wrong, and that even if I'm not, we might see Lightfall's Big Bad meet their end in a raid. And it is all just speculation, and it's impossible to know if we'll even beat Savathûn at all during the Witch Queen, let alone in a raid or in a campaign mission. Well, on the subject of Savathûn and her brother Oryx, so I asked Blackburn and Battle about how the team navigates the narrative surrounding important locations, either left behind in the original Destiny or removed from Destiny 2. Now, is there going to be a moment in the Witch Queen campaign where players feel like they should be visiting Oryx's ship, the Dreadnought? So a thematically similar space to Savathûn's throne world, not available in Destiny 2, added in Destiny's Taken King expansion. Well, we just have to operate within our technical constraints, and then we do our best with what we can do within those constraints, right? Said Blackburn. Okay, let's write the best story that's really going to be centered around the throne world and Savathûn. And so I don't think players that maybe didn't get to play Taken King or experiencing this story are now like, oh, complete the story, I really need to go back and visit the Dreadnought. However, Blackburn pointed out that the Destiny content vault exists, and it's a kind of rotating table of content from Destiny and Destiny 2 that Bungie can pull in and remaster with enough lead time. Now, as we start telling stories in the future about other characters, we start looking at, hey, what's the right time to bring something back, said Blackburn. Like, if we need this piece to be able to tell the story, this is how we're going to do it back. And I think this is a really exciting avenue for us as well. A good example of what Blackburn is talking about seems to be the return of Mars in the Witch Queen. The planet doesn't exist as it once did, either in the original Destiny or Destiny 2, but Bungie had a good reason to take the location out of the DCV and do something different with it, giving players a staging ground for the expansion. So could the Dreadnought come back when it makes story relevant sense? Of course it could, and maybe Bungie is hiding some surprises for players in what promises to be an already surprising campaign, but more importantly, Bungie and Blackburn don't feel constrained by the content that is and isn't in Destiny. They know where the series is headed, and they can twist the story or bring an important location out of the vault on their own terms. Well, really interesting stuff from that interview, and let me know what you think of that, plus all the details that we've heard. I'd really recommend heading on over to Polygon and checking out more of Ryan's work. There's some really great stuff there. Well, that is it for this look at the interview with Joe Blackburn and Blake Battle about the Witch Queen, and as always, thank you so much for watching. For more Destiny 2 content like this, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to This Week in Video Games. Or you can check me out on Twitter at TWIVG Podcast. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out the other videos on the channel. Well, thanks again. I'll see you soon.